Everyone is part of a bigger story. It's a bigger story than you can imagine. It's a big story about a really big God. Discover the story that shows you the character of God.
Hey, I'm Caleb, and I can't wait for you to check out my Bible. This one big book is actually like a library of 66 smaller books. We've got history, poetry, words of wisdom, personal letters, and much more. God inspired dozens of master storytellers over hundreds of years to write down these words for the people who lived then and for us now. Together, these books tell the epic story of how God created a perfect, beautiful world and everything in it, including us. Even when we turned our backs, God crafted a plan to bring us back into relationship. When we look at this incredible world God made and hear stories of how God has worked, we can trust God to work in our lives too. That's where true faith comes from. And I have 4 stories of the early church to show you what it can look like. We get started in the book of Acts. Here, a religious leader named Saul has an A+ grade in making trouble for Jesus followers. In fact, Saul gets permission to travel to the city of Damascus and make trouble for the believers there too. He's almost reached the city gates when a blinding light flashes all around Saul and knocks him off his high horse, in more ways than one. We stay in Acts chapter 9 for our next story. Saul, now blind, has been taken to a home in Damascus. 3 days later, God calls to Ananias, a Jesus follower in the city. God tells Ananias to go to Saul and pray for him. But Ananias knows all about Saul. He's like, why would I give a hand up to someone who's trying to take us down? Great question. Moving on to Acts 10. Here, an angel from God shows up while a Roman commander, Cornelius, prays. God tells him to send for a man named Peter. Meanwhile, as Peter prays the next day, God gives him a super vivid dream. A sheet from heaven filled with a whole zoo of animals seems to lower from heaven. And God tells Peter to have a cookout and eat up. What? It's a pretty crazy word picture, one that will send Peter straight to the home of Cornelius. We wrap up in Acts 12. Peter continues to share the good news about Jesus, but King Herod wants to put a stop to it. He throws Peter in prison and orders that he be guarded by 4 soldiers at all times. Peter faces trial and even death. But when other Jesus followers call out to God for help, God sets the stage for a Mission Impossible style prison break. The believers in the early church couldn't see Jesus with their eyes anymore, but they could see him in all the amazing things that God was doing. That made their faith strong. And I can't wait to see how that kind of faith shows up in you and me.